We moved out of London to be closer to Grandad Frank. That's how we responded to my son. Benjamin, at least. At 11, he was just old enough to understand this was a lie, but not old enough to figure out the truth. We were broke. My fleeting recruitment business had collapsed. With no way to make rent, I had no choice but to move all three of us back into my childhood home, the absolute last place I'd ever want to be. I don't want to say I took it out on them, because I didn't. I'm not that kind of guy. I definitely dropped a lot of balls though. If I'd kept my eyes on them instead of wallowing in my grief, failure, and childhood trauma, I think things would have worked out very differently. I definitely wouldn't be writing this. Damn it, where to begin? Well, best place I guess is when we moved out of Dovercourt. That's when I started withdrawing, both because my company had gone under and because Dad was dying. I also didn't say it out loud, but being that close to number 7 already had me on edge. Enough so that my one beer a night turned into 3, then 5. Liz was supportive, which is more than a blessing. She had every right to take Benji and go, but she didn't because she was amazing. I picked up a job at Harwich Port pretty quickly. Paying wasn't much, but it was something. Hours were long though. Being caught up in keeping food on the table is probably why I didn't notice too much about Benji's changes in personality. If I did, I probably chalked it up to moving anxiety or pre-puberty mood swings. Liz, for her part, was probably too caught up with looking after Dad. That's the part of the lie that wasn't a lie. Granddad, my father, was ill. We did want to be closer to him. When he passed away about 6 months after, we moved back in with him. The shock took me emotionally out of action for at least 2 months. It's when I finally started to come back around that I caught onto Benji not being right. Can we talk about Benji, Mike? I turned to Liz. She was sitting across on the sofa from me. It was a Wednesday or Thursday evening, late enough that Benji was in bed, but not so late I was drunk. I nodded at her. Yeah, we can. He took Dad's death pretty hard. Yeah, he did, but... Well, I don't think that's all it is, Mike. What do you mean? She shifted on the sofa, the cream faux leather creaking beneath her awkward squirm. Well, look, I know he has been through a lot, but he has been acting. Well, he has been weird, Mike. Weird in a way that I don't think is really to do with grief, especially since it started before Frank passed. I sat it for a few more moments, staring at the TV. I swallowed, resigning myself to another big hurdle in my life, then nodded. Yeah, I had noticed. I've been so caught up in, I know, Mike, I know. Lord knows this year's been harder on you than it has on anyone else, but, well, Frank died 2 months ago and I get it. If not now, then when, right? Right. So what's Benji's? Well, he's been quiet for a while, since a few weeks after the move. I just chalked that up to missing his mates. Me too. And I thought it would get better once he'd made his new ones, but he made new friends? She rolled her eyes. Yes. When, when you were, when, when you were at the top of a crane moving ship containers about, I expect, Fear Point. So at first I thought this Jimmy he was going out on his bike to play with was a kid, right? Right. I could feel the hair on my arm standing, a sense of both dread and anger blooming beneath my diaphragm. What house number, Liz? Michael, what house number? 7. But son of a... Unclench your jaw, Michael. Benji wasn't molested. That bastard died years ago. You know that. Well, what was I supposed to think? Jimmy is an old man, harmless. Benji told me he wasn't a kid the second or third time he went. Just because he's old doesn't mean I've met him too, because that was my first thought as well. Because I'm not a shitty mom, Mike. Sorry. Anyways, Jimmy lives at the end of the street. He sits in front his garden all day, which is how Benji got chatting to him. Benji's never been in his house, by the way, and I told him not to go if invited, because, again, not a shitty mom. But yeah, Jimmy is old, like old. He has at least 20 years on Frank. Even if he was a pervert, he'd snap like a twig if he tried anything. And he's damn near blind. Then why did you bring him up? Because, Mike, because of the pictures. She got up from the sofa and fetched a small folder from the shelf underneath the coffee table. In it were several dozen drawings, the style I recognized instantly as Benji's. He had enough self-made Batman/Spider-Man crossover art on his wall for me to figure that one, no problem. I could see why Liz found them disconcerting the moment she handed them to me. He says they're his dreams, she murmured. I gazed down at the street of 4A, flickering between them, with one hand scratching my forehead with the other. His dreams? Yeah, his dreams, not nightmares. Mike dreams. And this Jimmy bloke, he is in all of them? Yeah, you wanted me to talk to your son. Yeah, Mike, I do. I meant, Jimmy, what are you going to say? Get out of my son's dreams, please. Come on, Mike. He's just a harmless old man. Okay. I'll go talk to Benji. I sighed, obstacling myself from the faux leather and headed upstairs. I had already decided that I was going to speak to this Jimmy character. Liz be damned. There was no such thing as harmless old men. I'd learned that the hard way the last time I lived on this street. Besides, the pictures were, well, let's put it this way. An active imagination only explains so much. I needed more answers, and I knew before asking that Benji wouldn't or couldn't give me any. He wouldn't be able to tell me. Why? He'd been dreaming or going to these journeys with the old man down the street. I knew there was no point asking what the significance of the blue hill in all the drawings was, or why Benji had always drawn himself and the smiling stick-thin old man standing atop a floating red island far above. Before I could even start the question why Benji was dreaming of a dozen bodies falling into a pit, I'd had to first get him to explain the dark clouds on top of the throne of sleeping. I'd hoped, figures he'd been drawing at least 8 times, and before any of that, I'd have to get my 11-year-old son to acknowledge and admit he wasn't doing so good. Look, I wasn't the best at talking to the boy, okay? When I was his age, I have reasons to find all this difficult. Let's just leave it at that. He was drawing again when I knocked on his door and pushed it ajar. I didn't walk over to his desk to inspect the new work, but the fervent way he smashed his blue pencil into the paper told me all I needed to know. Benji, what do you want, Dad? Your mom says you're not doing so well. Says you've been having bad dreams. Not bad, just dreams. Doing fine. Are you sure? I mean, you drew Granddad Frank falling into a... That's where he is, Dad. I've seen it. Jimmy showed me in the dreams when I went down to... Okay then. Well, look, I've heard about your friend Jimmy. Benji stopped drawing and turned from his desk. His face caught me by surprise, so much that I almost yelped. I'd never seen a kid look that genuinely angry before. About him, Dad? You're not to talk to him anymore, okay? I'm putting my foot down. You're not. I beg your bloody pardon. The rest of the conversation went how you'd expect. Benji was grounded for a week, and although Liz was upset to hear us arguing, she didn't think that having some forced indoors time away from Jimmy wasn't the worst thing. It'll give him some space to process Frank going without distractions, she said. I didn't tell her that I'd spoken to Jimmy myself until after the fact. She was so upset, I think. But she understood. Liz already knew about what my life was like for me growing up here. That this street, that house, old men, old wounds, deep ones. As pissed as she was, she got it. This is something I had to do, that I wouldn't be able to sleep unless I stood outside the house and confirmed for myself. Jimmy wasn't the other guy, the one that lived there when I was a kid. Back when my parents didn't warn you not to accept invitations inside from strange old men on your street. The next morning, after she showed me Benji's drawing, I found myself marching down the street towards number 7. It looked exactly as it did in every recurring nightmare I'd had since the day I'd stepped inside it nearly 40 years ago. The sun-bleached wooden slates, the faded and chipped baby blue paint, the slightly sag in the middle, the crooked awning above the scarlet door. Even the taste of salt on the sea air felt more pronounced, more reminiscent of my childhood than it had since when we moved back. My ribs were hurting from the jackhammering of my heart against them as I placed a hand on the rickety front gate. The only reason I didn't turn and run screaming was the old man sat on the rocking chair in the front garden. This man wasn't Mr. Gray. He wasn't him. My eyes could reassure my brain about that much at least. Still, despite not being the monster from my nightmares, the encounter didn't leave me feeling any close to relieved. Jimmy? Michael? You know my name? You know mine. Benji told me. Benji told you, I guess. Elizabeth did. Jimmy grinned, flashing broken crooked teeth. I didn't grin back. Liz hadn't been wrong. Jimmy was ancient. You could describe him as a walking fossil without insulting him, because he would be almost 100% accurate. He was wearing a thick brown leather coat, a hooded one, and the thick, bulky material swallowed his tiny, frail form. The glimpses of hands, wrists, collarbone, and neck I caught were of near skeletal limbs, bone shielded from the elements only by the thinnest layer of skin imaginable. I think I saw flashes of the scars too, only flashes though, not enough to fully register them. I'd have piped up about them right there and then if I had. Nah, I didn't see those until last night. Back when I first met Jemmy, the mainstay of my focus was on his face. Just like his limbs, it was thin to the point of corpse-like. The skin was papery and waxen, the bones pronounced and protruding. The almost milky eyes sank back into the cavernous sockets, held in place only by the multitudinous folds of translucent flesh surrounding them. His eyebrows and the few long tufts of his hair that fell on his shoulders were somehow even paler than his chalkish tone. Each strand was the brilliant white of untamed lightning, from the patchy locks of wild hair on his scalp to the thick whiskers on his pointed chin. He peeled back his cracked lips once more, giving me another flash of his bony, cracked teeth. He peeled back his cracked lips once more, giving me another flash of his browned, cracked teeth. Let me guess, Michael, you're here about the drawings. Yes, the drawings. And the dreams. I blinked once more, refusing to return his protrude, black-gummed grin. You know about the dreams. Only what I've been told. Jimmy chuckled, a song like carcasses being churned through a meat grinder. And what's that? That Benjamin has them when he's sleeping. He chuckled again, and I could feel my jaw starting to clench. I wasn't in any mood for this. Not here, not outside Mr. Grand, outside his house. Not these games, not again, not with my frickin' son. I was ready to swing when I felt my nails dig into my palms. I could hear Liz's voice in the back of my head. Watch your temper, Mike. Watch your blood pressure. I fluttered, then tried changing my approach. I faltered, then tried changing my approach. How long have you lived here, Jimmy? Oh, not long. Don't worry, Michael. He's definitely dead. I took a step back from the gate, my fist unclenching, my fight or flight dial moving closer to flight with each passing moment. How did you? Because you're not hard to read. People generally aren't. Look, you want me to stop speaking to Benjamin? I already have. You can't stop me from listening though. He tells me a lot. I swallowed, my fists unclenching a little, but not because I felt relaxed. Like what? Like how the man who used to live in this house is the reason you never trust grown men to be alone with kids. How the... Go to work now, Michael. Benjamin is a good child. Elizabeth is a good woman. I'm not going to be here much longer. Cherish the time you all have together. His meat-grinding cackles followed me down the street. I wasn't aware I'd been running all the way to work until I arrived there panting, covered in sweat and jabbering to myself about freaking crazy old bastards, freaking Dovercoat, need to be freaking moved. The day was a blur. I spent it up in my crane cabin, all but ignoring the levers shifting in my autopilot arms. All I could think about was Jimmy crackling, that sagging house at number 7, Benji, my childhood, and of course, him. Always, it would come back to him, the man that lived at number 7 when I was Benji's age. The trauma had a new layer of unsettling that day though, a whole new reason to come bubbling to the surface from where I'd kept it stuffed down all these years. Jimmy knew about him. You probably think Benji told him, right? I can understand that. One problem though. Benji didn't know what happened at number 7. I never told Benji what happened all those years ago, and I kept most of the detail from Liz. I'd only told her about it once when I was drunk. She asked because my dad had told her about it once when he was drunk. Liz wouldn't have told either Jimmy or Benji. How did Benji know? 10 hours up a crane was enough time for me to decide I have to speak to Benji about it. Not argue, speak. A few hours and several beers later, I found myself sitting on his bed, staring at the latest drawing of a floating red island on the Azure Dune Sea. Benji, you went and spoke to Jimmy today, didn't you? Yes. How do you know? I told you not to. I didn't go see him. Then how? He told me in our dreams last night that you speak to him today. Benji, what of? You're going to ask me how I know about Mr. Granger, aren't you? I swallowed. Once more I could feel nails digging into my palm, the stinging of skin stretched too tight across knuckles. Benjamin, I need you to listen very carefully. I don't know what you heard, or how, but if this is a joke, it really isn't. You don't need to worry, Dad. When Jimmy told me about him, I asked the man in charge to make it right. I've seen where Mr. Granger is now. Well, he messed with the wrong kids, Dad. Let's put it. Benji, my voice shaking, teeth clenched. What the hell are you talking about? He reached into his desk and took out a drawing, smiling as he handed it to me. I nearly vomited when I saw it. Every muscle turned to jelly. Every sweat gland went into instant overdrive. This drawing wasn't of a floating red island above rolling blue hills under a starless sky. This one was a close-up of a man that despite the fact the drawing wasn't by a not exceptionally talented 11-year-old, I recognized instantly. That flat nose, those pudgy cheeks, the wart above the left side of his unibrow. It was a cartoonish version of the same face that had appeared in every one of my nightmares since the day after my 11th birthday. It was him. That's Mr. Granger. Where he is now, I mean. Where I saw him in the dream, Benji said, jabbing at the obscene naked man on the page. You see that circle up there? That's me and Jimmy looking at him down the hole. We're quite far away though, so I had to draw us really small. The man in charge was watching too, but he never gets down from his throne. He can see everything though, so it doesn't matter. And, and what's, oh, that. That's the machine the man in charge made for him. His design, I designed it though. My mouth was dry. I looked up at my son, his face beaming with pride. I swallowed. My mind was racing, and none of the destinations were good. What does it? Benji looked confused. What does it do? Punishes him. Duh. Tears slashed on the page. I couldn't take in the elaborate contraption, both the complexity of it and the obvious function of the many hooks, blades, and spikes on it. On its multitude of metallic limbs, most of all, though, I would not believe that something so twisted came from the mind of my little boy. Look, Dad, you see this bit? Despite my protest, he pointed at one of the machine appendages. Still beaming, this bit goes right up his, well, you know where. Right up until it gets to his belly. Right. See, the thing is that spike there is actually hollow. You can see that canister is attached to it. Do you know what that's filled with? Maggots, Dad. Maggots. Once it's up inside him, it pumps him full of them until he bursts. It does it slowly too, so it takes ages. Really hurts. Best part is that because he's already dead, he feels all of it. Every fragment of him hurts no matter how small. Then he is put back together like it never happened. Well, almost like it never happened. He can still feel it. It still hurt throughout, whatever the machine decides to do with him next. Oh, my other favorite bit is this one. There goes, right down his. Benji, stop. What? I thought you'd be happy. I know what he did. I don't know how you know, but Jimmy told. Shut up, Benji. Stop this bullshit. I rode, and it broke me to see just how much it flinched. Broke me, but not enough to calm my fury. I don't care how you found out, but you've got to cut this shit out. Right now, this isn't funny. This is sick. It's not meant to be funny, Dad. It's meant to make you happy, Jimmy said. Right, I've had enough of this. I'm putting an end to this Jimmy shit right now. I heard Benji started sobbing the second his bedroom door slammed behind me. Angry doesn't describe how I was feeling, and rage doesn't cover it. I wasn't seeing red, I was seeing black. A long, dark, black tunnel that ended with me breaking that creepy old man's nose and burning number 7 to the ground. Was this a rational response? No, it wasn't. But unless you've been in literally this exact situation, you have no clue just how easy it is for fury to silence any sense of reason. I wasn't thinking of consequences or prison, or even of the fact that Jimmy wasn't Mr. Granger. I wasn't thinking of anything. I'd snapped. And if you'd ever snap too, you'll know exactly what I mean by that. And if you haven't, well, I just hope you never find yourself able to empathize. Liz wasn't home. I was too angry to remember where she said she'd gone and too drunk to remember she'd have tried to stop me leaving. Were she there? I didn't even lock the front door behind me. I grabbed a can of lighter fluid and some matches from Dad's old bedroom and marched down the street towards number 7. I could see the front garden was empty as I approached, no lights on either. This didn't stop me from kicking down the gate, storming across the crack paving slabs and hammering on the lacquered crimson door. Jimmy, open this freaking door, you freaking creepy old bastard. What the hell have you done to my son? Every intake of breath smashed into the back of my flared nostrils, every exhale riding from my airways on a snarl. Gums screaming, Gums screamed in protest, enamel threatening to crack under the pressure of my clenched jaw. As I said, anger didn't cover it. There was fear there though, faint but not so much as I didn't notice. I was at the front door to number 7 again, back where I had been in the very last innocent minutes of my childhood. Jimmy, I know you're in there. Open up. My fist banged against the wood a third, fourth, fifth time. The sound echoed down the street, a boom 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 that bounced off of straight bins and disrupted a pair of cats fighting loudly 2 streets over. I waited a few moments, chest still heavy, nothing, my tense toes itching. It was about to deliver a furious kick to force my way in, to finally burn this cursed house and end its hold on me. To finally burn down this cursed house and end its hold on me. When the door swung inwards, when the door swung inwards.